Welcome to our deep dive, into those everyday pills that I think a lot of us just kind of take for granted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're talking common medications.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring how they work, what to watch out for,
Right.
and maybe even bust some myths about them along the way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how these medications that they're taking every day
Right.
actually work and what they're doing inside their body.
Right. And we want to get to that sweet spot of really understanding it, but not being bogged down by all that science jargon. Like, for example, did you know that aluminum hydroxide, which is just a simple antacid, can actually lead to aluminum toxicity?
Yeah, it's a great example of how even over-the-counter
Yeah.
medications should be, carefully considered when taking them because aluminum hydroxide neutralizes stomach acid.
Hmm.
But if you use it long-term, especially if you have kidney
Right.
issues, it can lead to a buildup of aluminum in the body, and that can be toxic.
So that's something to think about. And we're going to talk about a lot more medications like that today.
Right.
We've got medications for tummy troubles. We're going to go into pain relief. We're going to talk about vitamins.
Yes.
And then just a bunch of other, interesting medications.
Yeah, we're going to cover a bunch of different categories, and
Yeah.
within each category, talk about specific medications,
Yeah.
how they work, side effects, interactions, all that good stuff.
Perfect. So let's jump right into it.
Ah.
One of the biggest culprits, I think, for a lot of people out there is heartburn.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to kick things off with cimetidine, which is an H2 receptor antagonist.
Okay.
Now, that sounds kind of complicated.
It does.
So break it down for us. What does that actually mean?
So basically, H2 receptors are like little switches on cells in your stomach lining that control the production of stomach acid.
Okay.
And cimetidine blocks these receptors.
Okay.
So it turns down the acid production.
So it's like hitting the mute button on acid.
Exactly.
But I've also heard that it interacts with other medications. So what's the deal with that?
Yeah, so cimetidine can affect how your body processes certain drugs,
Okay.
like warfarin, which is a blood thinner.
Okay.
And this is because both of these medications are metabolized by the same enzymes in the liver,
Right.
and cimetidine can kind of interfere with that process.
So it's really important to tell your doctor about all the medications you're taking, even if they seem like, simple over-the-counter ones.
Absolutely. They need to have the full picture to
Yeah.
prevent any interactions or complications.
Okay, so speaking of reducing stomach acid,
Yeah.
omeprazole, this is another big one out there. It's a proton pump inhibitor, and I feel like I've seen commercials for this everywhere.
Yeah, it's widely used and it's very effective at reducing stomach acid.
Right.
It works by blocking proton pumps, which are like the final step in acid production.
Okay.
So it really reduces the acidity.
So if cimetidine is like the mute button, this is like shutting down the entire factory.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. But I've also heard that long-term use of omeprazole can actually lead to some unexpected downsides.
Yeah, there's some things to watch out for with long-term use.
Like what?
So it's been linked to an increased risk of infections,
Okay.
particularly C. diff infections.
Really?
And this is because stomach acid actually plays a role in protecting us from harmful bacteria.
Huh.
So when you reduce the acid production for long periods of time, it can disrupt that balance.
So you're making yourself more vulnerable to infections by trying to reduce the acid.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
it's all about balance.
Wow. And what else?
Also, there's a potential link to osteoporosis, which
Okay.
is a condition that weakens bones.
So reducing your stomach acid could affect your bone health.
Potentially, yeah.
That's crazy, man. It's like every time I learn about a medication, it's like there's always something else to consider.
Right, there's always more to the story.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to pause and ask our listeners.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken any of these acid reducers for an extended period of time? It might be something to reflect on and maybe discuss with your doctor if you have any concerns.
Good point.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about a different approach to dealing with ulcers with sulcralfate.
Okay.
So this one's pretty unique.
Yeah, it's different from the other medications we talked about because it doesn't neutralize or reduce acid production. Instead, it forms a protective barrier over ulcers
Okay.
to shield them from stomach acid.
So it's like a little bandage, exactly, right on the sore spot. But if it's not neutralizing acid, why does it matter when you take it?
Because timing is key with sulcralfate.
Okay.
You need to take it on an empty stomach
Mm.
at least an hour before meals and avoid taking other medications within 2 hours of taking it.
Got it.
Otherwise, it won't be able to form that protective barrier effectively.
So it's got to be able to, do its thing without interference from other stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, speaking of targeting specific areas in the gut, let's talk about olsalazine and sulfasalazine.
Yeah.
These are commonly used for inflammatory bowel diseases.
Right. And what's interesting about these that they specifically target inflammation in the colon,
Okay.
which makes them really good for managing conditions like ulcerative colitis.
So they're like specialized inflammation fighters.
Yeah, they go right to the source.
Right to the source. What about side effects? Anything to be aware of?
Well, diarrhea is a common side effect.
Oh, wow.
Which I know sounds ironic because they're used to treat a condition that often involves diarrhea.
Right.
But it's important to remember that these medications are working to reduce inflammation,
Okay.
and that's key to controlling the disease.
And here's a reminder for all of our listeners out there. Even if you start feeling better, don't just stop taking your medication without talking to your doctor first.
Right.
Abruptly stopping can lead to a relapse and, a whole host of other issues.
Definitely.
Okay, so before we move on to pain relievers, let's take a little detour into the world of vitamins.
Yeah, it sounds good. All right, so we're back, and we've talked about acid reducers and some medications that target inflammation in the gut.
Right.
So now let's shift gears and dive into the world of vitamins.
Yes, vitamins.
Everyone loves vitamins.
The tiny powerhouses that often get relegated to, just good for you.
Right.
But we don't really think about how they work.
Exactly.
I'm ready to go beyond the, sunshine and smoothies image of vitamins.
All right, let's do it. So let's start with a vitamin that I'm sure almost everyone has heard of.
Okay.
Ascorbic acid, or more commonly known as
Vitamin C.
vitamin C, that's right.
The go-to for fighting off colds.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm guessing it does a lot more than just boost our immune system.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Vitamin C is involved in a ton of different bodily functions.
Like what?
It helps with wound healing,
Okay.
collagen production, which keeps our skin looking youthful.
Ooh, I like that.
And it's even an antioxidant, so it protects our cells from damage.
So it's a multitasker.
Yeah, a true multitask.
But I've also heard that there's a limit to how much vitamin C we should be taking.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that real?
While vitamin C is generally safe, taking too much, especially in supplement form,
Right.
can lead to some unwanted side effects.
Okay, suck ass.
One of the most common is kidney stones,
Oh, no.
which happen when certain substances become concentrated in the urine.
So even vitamin C, if you overdo it,
Exactly.
it can backfire.
Too much of a good thing can be bad.
Moderation is key.
Exactly.
All right. So speaking of another vitamin superstar,
Yes.
let's talk about cyanocobalamine,
Okay.
or vitamin B12.
Vitamin B12, very important.
Essential for.
Yeah, it's crucial for forming red blood cells, which carry oxygen throughout our bodies.
Right.
And also maintaining a healthy nervous system.
So are there certain people who need to be, extra mindful
Yeah.
of their B12 intake?
Absolutely so, because B12 is primarily found in animal products.
Right.
Vegans and vegetarians often need to supplement
Got it.
to make sure they're getting enough.
Okay.
And also people with certain digestive disorders that affect absorption,
Right.
they might need to pay attention to their B12 levels as well.
This might be a good time for a self-check, listeners. When was the last time you had your B12 levels checked?
Good question.
Especially if you fall into one of those categories?
Yeah,
Okay, so let's move on from vitamins
right.
to what I think is the most intriguing category,
Okay.
which is the surprising world of other medications.
Yes, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, it's like a big bag of all sorts of medications that
Right.
try all sorts of things.
Right.
Okay, so first up, hyoscyamine.
Hyoscyamine.
I've never heard of this one.
So hyoscyamine is an anticholinergic drug,
Okay.
and that means it blocks the action of acetylcholine,
Acetylcholine.
which is a neurotransmitter.
I remember that from high school biology.
There you go.
Yeah, but I don't remember what it does.
So acetylcholine is involved in a bunch of different bodily functions,
Okay.
including muscle contractions and secretions.
Okay.
So in the gut,
Right.
acetylcholine stimulates muscle contractions and increases secretions.
Okay.
So by blocking acetylcholine, hyoscyamine can help reduce spasms and cramps.
So it's like telling those muscles to chill out.
Exact.
Right. But I'm guessing that messing with neurotransmitters can have some side effects.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What are we talking about here?
So one interesting side effect of hyoscyamine is that it can interfere with your body's temperature regulation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so people taking this medication might be more susceptible to overheating,
Okay.
especially in hot environments.
So no hot yoga after taking this one.
Probably a good idea.
Okay, noted. So let's switch gears to a medication that's used for some much more serious conditions.
All right.
Mercaptopurine.
Mercaptopurine.
I feel like this is a heavy hitter.
Yeah, this is a strong one.
Yeah.
It's often used to treat leukemia and Crohn's disease.
Okay, so how does it work?
So mercaptopurine belongs to a class of drugs called immunosuppressants.
Okay.
and it basically suppresses the activity of the immune system.
Wow, so it's like dialing down your immune response.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be life-saving in certain situations, like preventing the body from rejecting a transplanted organ
Right.
or controlling an overactive immune response in autoimmune diseases.
I can see how that would be beneficial, but also I'm thinking, if you suppress the immune system, doesn't that make you more vulnerable to infections?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest risks.
Right.
With mercaptopurine,
Okay.
patients taking it are at a higher risk of developing infections.
So it's like a trade-off.
Yeah, you're treating one problem,
Right.
but potentially creating another.
Okay, so you got to weigh those risks and benefits.
For sure. And careful monitoring is essential.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about a medication I think a lot of people have probably encountered.
Okay.
Metronidazole.
Metronidazole, a
Round
classic.
antibiotic.
Yeah, it's used for a wide range of infections.
Like what kind of?
Bacterial vaginosis,
Right.
C. diff infections,
Right.
even some parasitic infections.
Wow, so it's got a wide range.
It does.
How does it work?
So it works by disrupting DNA synthesis in anaerobic bacteria,
Okay.
which essentially prevents them from multiplying.
So it's like stopping them in their tracks.
Exactly.
But I've heard some interesting stories about this one,
Oh, yeah.
particularly involving a certain beverage.
You're talking about the disulfiram-like reaction that happens when you mix alcohol with metronidazole.
Right, so what happens?
It's not pretty.
No.
You get severe nausea, vomiting, flushing headaches.
Oh, man. This sounds like a really bad hangover.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so don't mix your alcohol and antibiotics, folks.
Good advice.
Right, it's important to always read those medication information sheets
Absolutely.
and, be aware of those interactions.
Know what you're taking.
Yeah, all right. So speaking of unique interactions, let's move on to a medication that I think has a really fascinating mechanism of action.
Okay, let's hear it.
Octreotide.
Octreotide, interesting one.
This one doesn't ring a bell.
So octreotide is mainly used for two seemingly unrelated conditions.
Okay.
Acromegaly, which is a hormonal disorder that causes excessive growth,
Okay.
and severe diarrhea caused by certain tumors.
Wait, so one medication can treat two totally different things?
That's right.
I'm intrigued. How does that work?
So octreotide mimics the action of somatostatin,
Somatostatin.
which is a naturally occurring hormone.
Okay.
And somatostatin inhibits both growth hormone
Okay.
and various gastrointestinal secretions.
So it's like a 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah, basically.
It's controlling growth hormone in one case,
Right.
and then slowing down gut activity in the other.
Exactly.
But I imagine mimicking a hormone can have its own set of side effects.
Of course. So octreotide can cause things like bradycardia,
Bradycardia.
which is a slow heart rate,
Yeah.
gallstones,
Yeah.
and gastrointestinal upset.
So it's not without its risks.
Right. But for many patients, the benefits outweigh the risks.
Got it. Okay, so let's go from mimicking a hormone to something a little more down to earth.
All right.
Psyllium.
Psyllium, the fiber superstar?
Yes, found in many bulk-forming laxatives.
Exactly.
Yeah, most people have heard of psyllium.
But I'm always up for learning more.
Okay, so psyllium works by absorbing water in the intestines
Okay.
and forming a gel-like substance that adds bulk to the stool
Right.
and softens it.
So it's making things move along.
Yeah, it helps things move more smoothly.
Right. But I remember those warnings about drinking enough water when you take psyllium.
Yes, very important.
Why is that?
Because without enough water,
Yeah.
the psyllium can become too bulky
Uh-oh.
and actually cause blockages in the intestines.
That doesn't sound good.
Not good at all. So hydration is key.
Hydration is key for happy bowels.
Okay, I'm going to remember that one. Okay, to wrap up this category of medications,
Well,
let's talk about one more for tummy troubles.
Okay.
Trimethobenzamide.
Trimethobenzamide.
Now, this one is used for nausea and vomiting, right?
Yeah, it's commonly prescribed for that.
Okay, and how does it work?
So trimethobenzamide works by affecting the chemoreceptor trigger zone in the brain,
Okay.
which is involved in the vomiting reflex.
Okay, so it's basically blocking those signals.
Yeah, it's like intercepting those nausea signals
Yeah.
before they can reach the vomit center.
Okay, so it's stopping the process before it even starts.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing a medication that affects the brain probably comes with some downsides?
Yeah, you guessed it. Drowsiness is a major side effect.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So definitely don't drive or operate machinery after taking this one.
Yeah, you don't want to be falling asleep at the wheel.
No, not a good idea.
Okay, and before we move on to our final thoughts,
Yeah.
I think there's one more medication we need to touch on.
Okay, which one?
Sulfasalazine.
Ah, yes, sulfasalazine.
This one is interesting because I think it kind of plays a dual role.
It does.
It can treat inflammatory bowel diseases like ulcerative colitis,
Okay.
but it can also manage rheumatoid arthritis.
Exactly. It's a multitasker.
So how does one medication do all that?
So sulfasalazine is actually made up of two components,
Okay.
sulfapyridine and 5-aminosalicylic acid.
5-ASA.
5-ASA, that's right.
Okay.
So the 5-ASA part is responsible for the anti-inflammatory effects in the colon.
Okay.
And the sulfapyridine is thought to have immunosuppressive effects
Okay.
that help with rheumatoid arthritis.
So it's like a two-pronged attack?
Yeah, it's tackling inflammation from two different angles.
But I'm guessing with two active ingredients,
Yeah.
the potential for side effects might go up.
Yeah, there are definitely some things to be aware of.
Yes.
So it can cause nausea,
Okay.
headache rash,
Okay.
and even liver problems in some cases.
And here's a fun one.
Oh, yeah.
It can turn your urine orange.
That's right.
It's true.
That's wild.
It's a quirky side effect.
I mean, I guess it's good to know.
Right. If you see orange urine, don't freak out.
Yeah, just a heads up.
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like this is a medication that needs careful monitoring. Oh, absolutely.
By a doctor.
Regular blood tests are often needed
Okay.
to check liver function and blood cell counts.
Okay, wow, we've covered so much ground today.
We have.
We've gone from simple antaphids to powerful immunosuppression.
It's been a journey.
My brain is like buzzing with new information.
I hope it's been informative.
Absolutely. It's amazing how much complexity is packed into these tiny pills
Right.
that we often just take without a second thought.
Exactly.
So before we wrap things up with our final thoughts
Yeah.
and a thought-provoking question,
Okay.
let's take a quick break. All right, so we got back, and I feel like we have taken quite a deep dive into this world of common medications.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah, I feel like, I've always just kind of taken these things for granted.
Right.
But now I'm realizing there's so much more to them than meets the eye.
Absolutely. I mean, each of these medications has its own unique story to tell,
Right.
but beyond just the specifics, I hope you've gained a better understanding of how important it is to really be informed and proactive about your health.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway from all of this. Like,
Yeah.
we can't just be blindly popping pills,
Right.
We got to understand what they're doing to our bodies.
Exactly. And I think one of the most important things to remember is that every medication, even those over-the-counter ones, has potential risks as well as benefits.
Right, there's no such thing as like a perfect solution.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to weigh those risks and benefits carefully with your healthcare provider.
And to be honest with your doctor.
Absolutely. Tell them everything.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, share any concerns you have,
Right.
and be completely transparent about all the medications you're taking.
Even those supplements.
Especially those supplements and over-the-counter stuff.
It's all connected.
It is.
And I think it's also important to do your own research.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, go beyond those little sound bites in the commercials.
Right. Go deeper.
Yeah, like, really understand what you're putting into your body.
There are some great resources available online and in libraries.
Yeah.
That can give you detailed information about specific medication,
Right.
how they work, side effects, interactions, all that good stuff.
And of course, always double-check any information you find with
Absolutely.
your doctor or your pharmacist.
They're your best resource.
Yeah, just to make sure it's accurate and relevant to your situation.
Right.
Okay, so to wrap things up, I think it's important to remember that these medications
Yeah,
are powerful tools,
they are.
and we need to treat them with respect.
Absolutely not just harmless substances.
Right, they can have real consequences.
Exactly. So use them responsibly.
Yeah.
And always follow your healthcare provider's guidance.
Okay, so as we conclude this deep dive into the world of common medications,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder.
All right. So the next time you reach for that familiar bottle of pills,
Yeah.
take a moment to really think about what's inside that tiny tablet.
Okay.
How does it work?
Yeah.
What are the potential risks and benefits? And how might it affect you specifically?
It's a fascinating world out there.
It is.
And the more we understand it, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions about our health and well-being.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So until next time, stay curious.